Okay, folks, should be coming up in 10 minutes' time. Madrid. We've got Manolo, Ruiz de Elvira here to talk about the events in Spain, which has, of course, been hit pretty hard by this coronavirus, and looking at the wider implications, both with local politics and geopolitically. So that's coming up in 10 minutes. If you're watching an archive version, you might want to fast forward. Please do. Otherwise, you're very welcome. Please call in and have a chat with us. Tell us how you're doing in quarantine around the world. God bless you. And give us your thoughts on what's going on as well. And I'll catch you in the comments. Catch you in about 8 minutes' time, people. All right. Coming up in 5-6 minutes, people. 5-6 minutes, people. Yeah. Please share the show. Thank you. You know, I gotta say, that is some of the worst jazz. That really is. But it is copyright free, people. Coming up in 3 minutes. Oh no, come on. Get it going. Hey folks, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good people. Welcome to the Daily Chaos. Auto ab KO, know what I mean? I'm Olly Connelly, thanks for turning up. Right, now, Madrid. Madrileño and naval architect Manolo Ruiz de Elvira offers an update from Spain's coronavirus-ravaged capital and considers what now for fast-changing national, continental and global political environments. What now? And you too, hey, give us a shout. Numbers up there in the spiel. The link, even. Get Zoom. Share the show, all that. Subscribe, all that. Yeah, send us whiskey, all that. Right, okay, great. Manolo, let me unmute you, sir, and hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly. Hi, Ollie.
Oh, God bless you. Thank you very much indeed. It's kind of funny because Manolo and I, we know each other a few years back now, and we've been meaning to sit down and have a proper chat about geopolitics. We probably disagree in many areas, but I suspect agree with the stuff that really matters. And we've never quite got there. But now, Manolo, we're both in quarantine with loads of time on our hands. How are you doing? What's going on with you?
Well, I'm good. I'm really good, given the circumstances. But I can't complain. I just talked to an Italian friend that's been locked in a tiny apartment from Monday to Friday, work next to the office before going home the weekends, and he got there, and well, I can look through the window. I have room. I'm with my family, so yeah, I'm lucky. Things are as good as they can be.
Yeah, it is all a bit peculiar. Just to say, I'm just going to do something very, very briefly. I'm getting a bit of crackle going on with the audio, and I think it's probably my sound card, so just bear with me, people. And that should be better now. Right, okay. Manolo, Spain, Madrid is obviously the epicenter of what's going on there. The state of play, as I understand it, today, we've got 146,500 infections, 14,500 deaths in Spain. 50,000 recovered is quite encouraging. No? I mean, that last stat is, I guess, the news headline today, really, in terms of, a bit of hope, no?
It is. I think everyone is looking at, well, I don't know how everyone is looking at the numbers. I know how I'm looking at them, but looking at them, trying to see what the trend is. I think they're behaving the way we could expect, even more looking at Italy. It takes time. I read a few days ago that I wonder why people didn't discuss this kind of things a bit more, that a lot of the infections that happen while quarantine happened in the house. So it was people with relatives or people who were living with. So yeah, that will happen, and that will take a few weeks to stop. But yeah, the numbers starting to look a little bit better. So this is really far from being gone, but at least it progresses as we expect, we hope.
Before the show, you pointed out to me that I'm using or referring to the same Roy Lab statistics that you are, which is a ticker that's coming straight from the WHO. I got to say, I do agree with President Trump about the WHO's handling of this. How much, before we go into that, because I do want to ask your opinion, but first of all, these stats, we can't actually rely on them, can we?
No, I think there are probably parts of them that we can rely on better than others. For instance, the number of deaths, it's a little bit more reliable than the number of infections, because the number of infections only reflect the number of infections from those who have been tested. So that for some, just imagine India, what the situation could be, or right now, or even in a few weeks. But Spain or the US or the UK, there are obviously a lot more people infected. How much is hard to tell. But even with the number of deaths, different countries have different standards for accounting that and deciding who died because of COVID and who didn't. So it's difficult, but if at least in every country there's some consistency, at least you can follow the trends, which means if you were not doing things very well since the beginning, and I'm not saying necessarily because someone was incompetent, but because circumstances were difficult, it's probably better to keep some consistency in the way you're doing things, or you're testing things, or you are classifying people who died from COVID or not something else, so at least you can follow the numbers. But this is a playground for statistic people.
Yes. I do wonder how much we are being played by these stats, though. Because, I mean, for example, the Center for Disease Control in the States, which is what a government agency, it's kind of, if you like, the United States equivalent of the WHO, they put out an alert on, I think it was the 22nd of March or the 24th of March maybe, saying that on a death certificate, if you're not sure what the patient died of, but you think there may have been COVID-19 reference in there, put it in and we'll count it and we'll notch it up to coronavirus. I just wonder how much hype actually there is. I mean, clearly we've got a problem. It's awful, and this is a super contagious, and that seems to be the biggest problem. And this big steep curve as opposed to a low hump, which is something that obviously the health professionals around the world would prefer to be able to cope with. I do wonder, though, how much the statistics are being massaged for other purposes, which we can come on to. What do you think? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't have a strong opinion or evidence, which doesn't mean they have not been. But I think this is, I think it caught us all so unprepared that there wasn't probably even time for a plan on that. So even if they're messaging this, they're improvising. So I think it's more driven by circumstances than intention. But again, it's extremely difficult. I think the only way will be in a year time when we start looking at mortality in different age groups, and hopefully with the help of other factors that could be correlated to, and comparing to previous years, there will be a really good assessment of how many people actually died because of this.
I hope
in terms of infections, that's a lot more difficult.
I hope so. I do reiterate my concern, though, because that CDC alert the other day, that was the first part that I said. First them saying, notch it up to COVID-19. And then there's another part which says, oh, but if there are complications in death, we're not sure what it is, we'll do the investigation. That's assuming they've got time, which they may not 2 weeks from now or a week from now. But if they do have time, they said, well, we will not adjust the original mortality rate statistics from the original death certificate. We won't adjust it. So if you've notched it up to COVID-19 and we find that it wasn't COVID-19, we won't adjust the statistics. So I'm quite concerned about how this is being used. But on the other hand, it is impossible to say. And I agree with you that we are kind of learning as we go along. But the WHO, I have to say, I think they need a massive turnout at the WHO. The way they just look like a China agency.
Well, this is complicated, and as I said, when we have the perspective of times, there will be things that will be impossible to hide, and we will all sound incredibly smart. Everyone is very smart, especially, well, when you look at every country, the parties which are not in the government at this point, they are way smarter than everyone else, and they would have done things differently. They say now, actually, when you go back to the newspapers and what they said at the beginning of the crisis, in many occasions, it was just the opposite. Like in factors like how much we damage the economy and how much we stop the economy so we don't damage the health of the citizens. It's a really difficult decision, and they has to be made with very limited information. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't feel that smart these days.
No, I completely appreciate that. I personally have more questions than answers, that's for sure, as well. And I think most people do. And I think a large part of that is because, I don't know about you, but I just don't trust the media anymore. There have just been lie after lie after lie about so many crucially important events, not least relating to democracy and the global order over the last few years. This comes along, and I think that the Spanish press is a little bit more mature than the British press, frankly. The British press has been hysterical and, in my opinion, very much fear-mongering. I don't particularly want to get into a debate over the media with you, but I am curious to know, please, sir, what is the effect of that now in Madrid? How are people doing? What is the social atmosphere?
Well, it's hard to tell because the contact we have is with friends, people who are close. relatives. Well, my dad turned 19 last week. 90 last week. So we celebrated that with Skype, and he lives with my sister, so they're safe and isolated. But we have a limited access to what's happening in society. So probably the only opportunity, really, I was thinking about taking the trash out, but you don't see anyone. So going to buy groceries, that's the real moment when you meet people. Um, in general, you meet people who are concerned, they are careful, they're cautious, and um, in general, they're respectful of each other in terms of no one trying to cut a line, no one's trying to. So people is behaving in a very reasonable way and accepting.
Yeah.
There's little more than we can do about this, at least at the time. Um, so and also, yeah, you don't want to get. I'll get to the press just a little bit to the media.
Okay, go on.
It really depends on media. Is really a broad term.
Sure.
I have to say, obviously, I have my preferences. I know sources which I trust more, and I have sources which I trust zero. But I still go to those sources. But when I say sources that they have a name of a person writing at the end of the article who's saying that. I refuse to comment or even read any other news. But that already gives you a broad spectrum of opinion. Well, there are parts of the media we try to inform, I guess. We can always guess how manipulated that information is or not, but well, at best they try to inform right or wrong, and some that try to steer things in a different way. And the problem is that we all lack so much information that probably the only really basic criticism you can make, I'm thinking here, any country to any government is there at least a rationale behind of what they're doing? It's difficult to decide where you put the line, like
a rationale
and wealth,
or an agenda. I mean,
yeah, I don't believe that much in long-term agendas. In general, obviously there's people with very long-term agendas and groups, but
the mainstream media is very biased. I think in Spain there is more of a range of view, actually. But by and large, the mainstream media in the Western world is incredibly biased. I mean, it is, for example, very much a globalist media, owned by globalists or controlled by globalists, and talking. I mean, for example, where really is the criticism of China and China's handling of this outbreak? I mean, China is a totalitarian state with concentration camps, the most awful human rights record, which we should have absolutely nothing to do with. And yet, if you read the average newspaper, it's, China's helping us. They're sorting out the masks for us, sort of thing. As opposed to China covered this up for about 2 months in cahoots with the WHO, as opposed to saying, you know what, we got a problem, Houston. You better ground the flights to Wuhan and to places like Shanghai. And that, you could argue, not entirely believe this, I'm playing devil's advocate here as well, but you could argue that we could have saved a lot of lives, at least in the short term. Definitely, no?
Well, I'm not sure if we would have believed it, or I think.
Well, you say
it's
that.
like discussion of globalization. It doesn't matter if you are in favor or against it. It's going to happen no matter what. It has happened, and it had effects in many things. So one of the effects is obviously in health and in the possibility of a pandemic. So I agree, and that's what China is. But China is, and certainly they're going to come out of this at the match. I won't say on top, but certainly in a really good economical position. They're probably going to improve their image a little bit. But yeah,
do you think so? Really?
Yeah, I think so. I don't
How?
think in any other countries. Well, I don't think in other they have. I mean, if you're a dictatorship, you have better resources to hide things if you want.
Hmm.
Um, the only reason I would trust the numbers from the US is because they don't come from the federal government, which is just one block. They come
Hmm.
from different governors of different states, which have different interests, which are not necessarily lined up. So they're
Yeah.
not interested in covering up the problem. So,
Yeah.
but not because
True.
of the intention, but because the whole context creates that situation where it's a bit more difficult. So I don't think this is a question of intention of who wants to hide or not. It's who has better chances to hide for a while. And yeah, maybe for a while, but that didn't last that long. How serious was what happened in China? We'll probably never know, but I don't think we will know the full extent in the rest of the world that well. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a
I
bit
mean,
better.
again, just on that media thing, again, I find it very difficult to trust anybody that says we should put aside any conspiracy theories about some kind of a lab release, be it erroneous or malfeasant. And we must believe the official narrative coming from a one-party state.
Well,
I find that a bit laughable. No,
yeah, I'm a non-believer about anything. I don't think you
mm.
should blindly believe anything.
No, I agree.
That's
I agree.
that's stupid. I think you should question everything with whichever facts you have and try to find those facts actually, which is not all that easy. But
Mm. Mm.
yeah, it's difficult, and at some point you have to balance the information you have and decide what you believe. But no, you should not absolutely believe blindly anything, and certainly when it comes from sources that make things difficult to believe even less.
One thing we do know is that we expect, in your opinion.
Whew.
Yeah, I
I
know.
have no
It's a
idea.
big question. It's a big question.
Although I 100% agree with you that this is going to change us, this is going to change the world and society and the way we look at things. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Just this is anecdotal, but I just read
Hmm.
a couple of hours ago about Fauci in the US saying that Americans probably won't ever shake hands again in the future. Well,
Oh, that's a terrible thing, isn't it?
yeah, I don't think.
I have to say, Manolo, just as a very brief aside, I do not want to see Mediterranean people not cuddling themselves, not cuddling
No,
each other, and
that
the
won't
way that
happen.
you do. You know, that
No,
is.
that won't happen. But it certainly will change the way we see the world.
Mm.
It's there's something which is happening in a lot of countries. I saw it the other day in New York was happening too, which is in Spain. It's at 8 p.m. People um, go out on their balconies and start clapping hands for the health professionals. Um,
Mm.
and I have mixed feelings with that because uh, a lot of the people that's doing that, and actually the loudest one advocating for these kind of things, are the ones that allowed, at least in a few regions in Spain, allowed politicians to cut taxes a little bit at a very serious expense of the money that went to the health system. Actually reducing the numbers of doctors and nurses over the years, and even putting them in a very precarious situation in terms of contracts or how they, and now they're the heroes. They are, but they were before
Yeah,
for different reasons. So I find
yeah.
really hypocritical this kind of expression. I mean, you want to support them, well, accept that you're going to have to pay a little bit, maybe a little bit more taxes, and that money should be placed uh, in health if that's what we want. But you can have it both ways.
Okay, let's
So
take a.
probably this will make people think.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I think that's a perfect place to come back to on how we are going to see a more socialist world, very, very possibly in the future off the back of this, in some respects, and absolutely wonderful in terms of respecting, for example, our healthcare and first responder professionals. Just take a few comments. Carlos, she had issues. Oh, I don't know. That's odd. Carlos is having a chat with somebody else in the comments. Tanis pulling bloody Laura Kay. Laura Koonsberg, I think Tanis is referring to. The BBC trash. Fake news. Been saying if Boris doesn't make a show soon, there will be a government coup. For goodness sake, that person. And Rigby, I don't know who Rigby is. Oh, Rigby needs sacking. And take Peston to Robert Peston complaining about the mainstream media. Tanis, yeah, no, that's right. They kind of do seem to be hyping up, I don't know, trying for some sort of cabinet coup or what have you off the back of, I don't know, for goodness sake. Apparently Boris is improving. His temperature's come down overnight. So, oh, blimey, can you believe it? Right, Jamie Mitchell, Russians and friends now. All of a sudden, China is the enemy. Carlos says, I still remember the Chinese driving over protesters with tanks in Tiananmen Square, of course. Steve B., this Dr. Fauci in the States, who is second in command of the coronavirus lot, is just a deep state Clinton hack. Notice how Trump keeps enemies closer. It does, there's some interesting stuff going on for sure. Jamie Mitchell says it's a cabal operation, not China. China would not be so stupid to be blamed in any way for this. As Amanda Rolfson may think my bank card is having the same problems, won't work properly. Anyone else having the same problems? Don't know, Amanda. Maybe they're going to turn you off, darling. Amanda Rolfson also says, where I come from in Yorkshire, they like to cuddle. Just the norm. Like the ones down south are less likely to. And look at us. Odd when we do. But, I tell you, I really mean it. I do worry, actually, Manolo, about the lack of... It's terrible to me for people not to be a bit tactile. I do hope that we can get over this and, sort that out quick. It is a wonderful... there are one or two things, some terrible things, one or two things that are going to be quite wonderful coming out of this. I guess one of them is that, for example, people will not be needlessly commuting and wasting all that time and energy going into offices when they could be working from home, and hopefully having a better life for it as well, everybody. But also, we are gonna see maybe a better emphasis on the kind of people that we should respect and appreciate. No?
Yeah, I completely agree about that, and I completely agree about the expectation of more rational work and the whole idea. I'm in a technical committee which meets it's a volunteer work that we meet 3 times a year. And this year, obviously, it was last weekend, so we did it with 4 long sessions and video conference, and it was, I tell you, it was pretty much as efficient as having 10 people traveling through Europe and being in a hotel for 3 days. So yeah, things are going to change. I don't think fundamental things are going to change. And I agree with you in your hopes and actually in the prediction. Look, AIDS didn't stop sex. So this is not going to stop hugging or touching. It's ridiculous. You just adapt and well, maybe I was reading the other day that in Germany they were considering people having some sort of identification for the ones that already passed the COVID, so they're safe, and so like a bracelet. And so, well, Germany bracelet's not a great idea. So if you try that in Switzerland, maybe. But well, this is going to span. This is going to change things and people, but I think in fundamental human relationships, I don't think it will produce any damage. Actually, I think it will work the other way. And you're right. People will start to put more value in the work of other people. I'm not even saying doctors. You go to the grocery store and you still have the people, the cashiers, which are every day they're attending people and putting themselves in risk. In general, you see people who's very kind and respectful of others. Yeah?
Hmm.
And you also see idiots, and I think this gives the opportunity to show people as they are. So I'm not a big fan of Twitter. If there's something interesting in Twitter, I will see it in more conventional media at the end of the day. But I have to say, one thing that internet does is give a voice to a lot of people that we do want to hear their voices. Um,
Yeah.
Especially the ones we don't like. It's much better to have those voices speaking loudly rather than hidden somewhere uh, planning I don't know what.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
everything can be argued and discussed.
I say put it all out there and then let people make their own minds up.
Yeah.
Completely. There is Twitter has been horrid. Actually, a lot of it about Boris Johnson. I cannot understand. I have one or two, if you like, political enemies. One or two people, like Henry Kissinger, frankly, and Tony Blair, for example, are two that are in the news at the moment that I cannot stand for various reasons. Athnad, actually, for the same reason as Blair. They did the same thing, didn't they, along with Bush, Iraq. But I wouldn't dream of saying the kind of things that have been said. I don't know that Spanish people are quite as unkempt, actually. I do fear for my British culture that a lot of people have just somehow lost it. I kind of think that there has been a grotesque propaganda which hasn't necessarily been left or right, although frankly I think the left is worse for this, far worse actually, but more so which has been about divide rule. And I do think, and this again comes down to the media, I think that there is so much division and that people are incited into this grotesque characterizing of people and what have you. And I do fear for that in terms of society. I don't know whether you see that. I don't think we do see that as much in Spain, no?
No, not that much. I think you see that in some media sources, but I don't think it is as hard. Actually, in the ones that I see that are the ones that I read, well, because I want to know what they think or what they say. But
Yeah,
no,
I agree.
I don't think it's the same. I think you're right.
What is the difference?
I don't know. As for the causes,
Why
really don't know.
is I wonder if Spain isn't more joined up as a society than the UK, which has been quite fragmented, I think. I don't think that migration has worked as well as it could have done in the UK.
Yeah, it's difficult to tell. I think there is less division that some media sources and politicians try to show or even try to create. And I think situations like this one, in general, well, it depends where, but certainly in Spain, I don't think they work in favor of creating division. I think it works in the opposite direction, but that may be cultural.
Yes. Is also, I wonder if it's got something to do with stronger family values, frankly. I think that in Britain, the nuclear family has been largely devastated. And I also think, and I'm agnostic. Yeah, I mean, I have faith, but I can't stand religion personally. But I have to say, it seems to me also that Catholicism has done a lot to hold Spain together in terms of people looking out for each other a little bit more, being more joined up.
I think I disagree. I think that has changed very, very much in Spain the last 30 years, both in terms of family and I, I, I'm not saying that it's unimportant. It is, but I think it's important to a healthy level, not to a crazy
Yeah.
southern state in the U.S. Go to church every
Oh, no,
not
no.
every.
Sure.
But I think
Sure.
it's more of a community feeling, and there is a stronger general community feeling, and that works especially in moments of crisis, and well, that's when it's put to test, but it's also when it develops. So yeah, that may be the cause. Yeah, I'm
It
not
is
sure.
interesting. It is interesting. I kind of wonder if economically the UK can suffer coronavirus better than Spain. On the other hand, conversely, I kind of think that Spain can suffer coronavirus better from a social point of view. It's just something I've been considering, and I wonder how much unrest there might be.
Maybe from a social point of view, but well, the problem is economically, Spain is relying, a good part of the industry is based in tourism
Yes.
and traveling, so that's going to take longer to recover. So that's going to
Yeah.
be really damaging. But at the
Yeah.
same time, people is used to hard times. It's terrible, but after the financial crisis, you ended up seeing a lot of people that were living from their parents' small pensions. So, but that happened. So that people managed to survive. Okay, when I say survive, and I think of countries who really have it difficult, I think it's a bit ridiculous. We survive, but in general, people, I mean, they can eat, they can sleep. It's not that it's not Syria, you know. But yeah, some people really had it really rough. You find people who would help, and now I don't think this is a general thing, but obviously a lot of people that's renting apartments, uh, and their job started, they're being fired or temporarily fired, and they're in trouble. And there's I don't know how much, but the few that are already in the news of tenants that they're given a break by the landlords and say, okay, forget about this month and next month, and then we'll see how things go. That would be unimaginable in Spain in normal times. I mean, times of crisis that may happen. So I think this. I was going to say this brings out the best and the worst in people. I think it just brings out whatever people is, and the ones that are good, it brings out a lot of good, and, and the idiots they just expose themselves. So that's good.
What does
Both.
this mean for for continental politics with the EU? There's a lot of talk about the need for something like a corona bond in southern European countries now. Certainly Italy and now Spain are talking about that. On the other hand, I guess understandably as well, Germany, the Netherlands, what have you, are not going to be particularly keen to bail out. Are countries like Spain and Italy too important to fail for the EU, yet too big to bail?
Well, I think, uh, for better or worse, we are very, very much interlinked economically. Um, So I don't know how much of obviously there are big discussions going on, how much of those discussions happen with the knowledge that there's a middle point that's going to be reached at the end, because otherwise we're going to be hurting each other. I remember that this joke of a guy going to the dentist, and when the dentist is about to start working, he just grabs the dentist balls and said, "Doctor, we're not going to hurt each other, are we?" So I think there's a bit of that situation. So even if both sides are pushing as much as they can, I'm assuming there are only two. There's probably a few countries which are a bit more neutral. There will be some point where some agreement can be reached. But this involves so many things, and it's such a complex situation that I don't know how much maneuver it's really. I mean, that some northern countries really, I mean, even if this eventually doesn't hit them as hard, and it might, you know, the UK, okay, the UK is out now, but the UK was, or France.
Well, it isn't. No, it isn't.
Well, no, it isn't, not practically,
not really.
not yet. This wasn't a problem a week ago, and now it's a big problem. France, numbers in France are going really bad. I mean, it's where the virus is really growing hard, even Germany. So this is going to affect everyone. Certainly, it's going to affect differently depending on how your industries are based and how much you stop your economy. But well, any group that associate themselves to, for better or worse, like the European community, it provides, or it has to provide to some point, some idea of concept of insurance. You know, if things go well or things go back, well, those that had it better will have to help a little bit the ones that didn't. I don't think that's assumed. The question is at which point it will be reached, but I don't think it will be too far from the expectations of either side. This
is the ultimate test for the EU, is it not? I mean, there is a possibility that even Germany might be forced to leave. Such is the need, perhaps, arguably, or probably, for these corona bonds down the road. Have you considered where this may lead in terms of the EU, Manolo? And even if the EU may become superseded by global government?
No, no, I haven't gone that far. No, and I remember having this conversation when the euro was going to be gone back in 2011 or 12, and it didn't happen, and it saved me a lot of thinking. So it would have been a waste. So I didn't think that far, and it turned to be it wasn't necessary. I think in terms of thinking about it, I'll cross that bridge if I get there.
No, fair enough. I do find it very curious. Okay, let's come back a little bit more local. One thing, a huge story, in my opinion, that's come out of Spain over the last week or so, last 10 days, has been this universal basic income. So we have the Spanish economy minister standing up saying they're going to bring it in, a universal basic income. So everybody gets an income, regardless of what they are or are not doing in Spain. And not only for the duration of this, terrible crisis that we're seeing at the moment, but permanently. Where was that in their manifesto? They just put this government together, what, about 4 or 5 months ago, something like that? I didn't see anything of that in their manifesto.
Okay, that's a bit of an interpretation.
Okay.
So that's a bit of a very free interpretation. You could consider that could apply exactly the same concept to the checks that Donald Trump is going to be sending from I don't know which date in April to
but that's a one-off. That's not permanent. That's the difference.
No. Yeah, but it's a bit of the same concept. And obviously, people for many years, not in Spain, in many countries all over the world, have discussed this idea. Obviously, with people pushing it and detractors. I don't think it's going to happen in the short term anywhere. But yeah,
but this is the difference.
It's a topic I'd like to discuss with experts, really. And I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion about it, neither in favor or against.
It is the difference.
I have cautions in both sides, obviously.
Well, I'm not saying that it isn't perhaps necessary in the short term, although it's got to be paid for somehow. as well, and that's how's that going to happen? But it isn't stimulus. This is ideology. That's the difference.
Yes, depending how far you take it. I mean, you could say unemployment insurance is a little bit of that.
Yes, you could.
At some point.
Yes.
But the consequences of having no unemployment insurance are far worse economically. So at some point, you have to accept situations that have certainly a down. I'm not saying this is one of those, but they have a downside. But the global benefit they provide are a little bit better. This is a good example with this with drugs, except we are getting much closer in that point to what a lot of experts say that best way to fight drugs are make them all legal.
Yeah.
And spend all the money you spend fighting them. Just if needed, get taxes from there, but certainly provide more education. No law is going to prevent anyone from using any drug. So, but that's something that could not even be mentioned 10 years ago. And now there are more and more countries. Portugal is a great example of this. In Portugal, the government give heroin addicts heroin directly. Not only the deaths have reduced dramatically, but the people using heroin has been reduced dramatically. So yeah, sometimes extreme measures can bring benefits. I'm not sure about this one, and obviously it sounds like a solution in the short term because you have to put money in the hands of people so they can consume and they can trigger the economy producing because there are consumers that buy the products. And but yeah, long term is certainly a more complicated issue. And it's as much as I have to say, I'm curious. I've been curious about this since I heard it. I don't have a strong opinion. I would really like to see a discussion of two intelligent persons with good information and in opposite corners about this, which I haven't. I've seen a lot of politicians talking about it, but talking in political terms, which I don't think they're that relevant.
Yeah, no, I hear you. There's been a lot of talk over the last 5 or so years about universal basic incomes and little tiny experiments rolled out here and there, but too small really to be able to judge the impact ultimately of it. But yeah, there's a lot of talk around the world, and I just find it incredible that without there being a considerable debate, the Spanish economic minister would come out and say we're going to roll this out permanently as a statement.
That's a very free interpretation of what he said.
What did she say then?
I can't remember exactly the terms, but it wasn't something that explicit. I don't remember it that way.
I will try and find the clip because it may have been translated poorly, and so
it may have been also a reply from that sounds. I think it was a reply from some journalist. So I don't know. I would have to hear that again and interpret it.
Okay, I'll try and find it.
But let me tell you about this. I know I'm basically most hesitance about this comes from obviously you need, in very general terms, people need incentives to do things, and those incentives can be very different, but can be obviously economical ones are very significant, but they're not the only ones. So it is difficult. Ultimately, what you want is to provide incentives for people to progress economically, socially, in any possible way, for people to making the effort to progress. I think we all agree on that. But maybe there are ways which are not so obvious to make that happen. That may sound like they try to promote the opposite. I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm just opening the door because I know there's very smart people on both sides, and I've heard good arguments, but the jury's still out. I don't have a strong opinion.
Let me give you some background. I've found the story on a couple of different sources, and so it's Nadia Calvino, economy minister, and she was talking to Ana Pastor, who's a very respected journalist.
I know that. That's
I know you. I know you know, sir. And let me just on Forbes.com, for example, they say Spain to roll out permanent universal basic income soon, in inverted commas. Top line, Spain, which is the biggest cluster of COVID-19 infections outside the US, will introduce universal basic income as soon as possible, in inverted commas, as part of its efforts to combat the economic effects of coronavirus. Economy Minister Nadia Calvino said on Sunday, that would have been Sunday gone, critically, the scheme is expected to be rolled out indefinitely. The move has been prompted by the coronavirus crisis, but Calvino told Spanish channel La Sexta that the measure, once rolled out, will remain after the pandemic is finally over. No date was given for the rollout, but Calvino assured that the measure will be launched as soon as possible and that the government is working out the details. It is not known what the amount would be, but it is expected to be geared towards families and complement other social security measures pledged by the Spanish government to support the population through the crisis, it says here. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's government rolled out a €200 billion package last month to boost Spain's economy in line with stimulus packages introduced in some of the worst hit countries. Mortgage payments have been paused. Spain saw record job losses. Crucial comment, according to Forbes, Calvino told Ana Pastor, the work is complicated and we are on many fronts at the moment, but the ministry is working decisively on it and we will do it as soon as possible. Now, according to MSN.com, and actually I think that this was originally a Bloomberg. In fact, I'm pretty sure it was a Bloomberg story from 2 days ago now. Their take on this is that the Spanish government is working to roll out a universal basic income as soon as possible as part of a battery of actions aimed at countering the impact of the coronavirus pandemic, according to Economy Minister Nadia Calvino. Social Security Minister José Luis Escriba is coordinating the project and plans to put some sort of basic income in place as soon as possible, with the main focus on assisting families. Calvino, who also serves as Deputy Prime Minister, said in an interview Sunday night with Spanish broadcaster La Sexta, but the government's broader ambition is that basic income becomes an instrument, in quotes, that stays forever, that becomes a structural instrument, a permanent instrument, she said. Whoa.
Well, again, the fact that there's no date, I think it adds to the idea that it's a intentionally vague enough statement. But the whole world has been moving towards that direction in the last 50 years. This happens even in the US, in Canada, probably in the UK, and to some level. I mean, some help to a specific cases
minimum
with different
income,
names.
all that.
So the concept is there, and it's been put in practice. I know that the whole idea of just basic income or putting the words income, I think the use of words make it sound different than what it is and it has been.
Yeah, maybe. I wonder if the translation is slightly skewed, actually.
No, but I mean, in every single language, I don't think it's a problem with the translation by itself, but this happens. It's like pension. There's a minimum pension, even if you haven't paid in Spain, your 35 years, you're at least going to get that minimum pension. I mean, the alternative is that you're going to have elder people dying because they cannot eat food. And in the Occidental world, we have decided that is not acceptable. Even if probably most of them work really hard through their lives and struggle to go through them, and maybe some of them were really couch potatoes that did nothing and then expected someone would take care of them. But the problem is that if you don't do it, I mean, you have to accept there are going to be freeloaders anywhere, whatever you do. But
And there are now.
yeah, of course, everywhere in every instance of society, but even at the highest levels. But you have to accept that everything you do for a reason is going to have some negative effects. But eventually, you have to balance them.
Yes.
So, but I don't think this is really something radical or new. This happens, and well, this happens in Denmark, in Germany. I think this happens in most civilized countries. I mean, you don't let people die.
There is no question that we need. Well, I don't know. Maybe you disagree. You tell me, sir. But it seems to me that this global financial Ponzi scheme is a joke. The central banks, for example, have no room to move now, and haven't really done since 2008, which we've never properly recovered from. What are they fiddling with? Half a percentage point, and then going into negative interest points on 3-year bond yields or whatever, in order to try and prop things up. Printing money. In other words, stealing money from people's pockets, from their savings, by printing more and devaluing what's in their pocket. And it's only a fiat currency anyway, not backed with anything but confidence. We do need a new system, huh?
Well, maybe if we're all bankrupt, no one is.
Yeah, that's right. Could you see? I wonder if we might actually see. I don't know. At the moment, to me, it looks remarkably solid, the global economy, considering what's going on around us.
Yeah.
But I wonder if we see the whole thing.
At least in appearance.
Yeah, well, in appearance, yeah. How is that? And might we see some radical change, and maybe even a debt jubilee with completely different monetary system? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think that will happen. I think the ones that have the power to change that are too invested. Even if that was a good idea, that I'm not even sure it is. But even if it was, I don't think. I go to something much simpler. I remember years ago there was some in the news. The headlines were, the 500 euro bank notes are going to be retired. They're going to be retired from. And then you read, you said, no, in 5 years' time we're going to stop printing them. So I keep wondering, what's the downside of saying from one day to the next, okay, 500 euro notes are not valid anymore. They are in the banks, and you can go to your bank and you can put your 500 euro bank notes. And obviously, then according to different regulations, we will have to notify the tax authorities about who put money there. And then if they ask you to explain, then you have to do it. But what's the downside of doing that? Why something like that doesn't happen? And I haven't found anyone that could give me an opinion that a good reason why not doing something like that. So if something that as simple as this is, it's not going to happen. The other one is not going to happen by any means. And actually, the ones holding the debt are also powerful. They're not just holding the debt. I think the American debt is mostly held by probably Middle East countries or Emirates or Saudi Arabia and China mostly. Yeah. So China, which is was out of the capitalist world. Now it is as much as anyone else, if not more, and even if they have a different political system. So no, I don't think that's going to happen.
I do wonder. You mentioned the 500 euro note. I see a push towards a cashless society anyway over the last 10 years or so.
That's happening. There's no doubt. That's going to be interesting.
It's scary,
all the cash is going to have to surface somehow.
It seems to me that cash, our right to pay for things with cash, in other words, for our transactions not to be logged, is about the last true liberty that we have.
Well, do we?
Well, yeah, because, if I don't know, you and I do a deal on something, I want to give you cash. And it's nobody else's business that I've bought your 1980s collection of pornographic Mayfair magazine or...
Yeah. Well, it's not a question whether you like it or not. It's going to happen. It's certainly going to happen. So what we have to do is prepare to protect our privacy the best we can to make it compatible with that. I think if we get stubborn in terms of, we are not going to let that happen because it's going to be invading our privacy, then we're going to do nothing about it, and it's going to happen anyway. So I think it's much better to think about it like as a heads up, and certainly hear everyone complaining about the risk, as you're saying, and then trying to address those risks. And
there is a debate.
Yeah,
you're saying.
Yeah, but it's a healthy debate. I think it has to happen, the debate, before this happens. But
damn right.
There's no doubt it's going to happen.
That's great. What level of debate is there? Because in the UK, people, it seems to me, are just being drip-fed articles here and there, just saying how, you know what, we're going to go cashless, as opposed to, what do you think about a cashless society? So in Spain, please give us a bit of an idea of the political discourse that's going on with that, and also as we close the show, generally, because it seems to me that, it's true, politics affects people, really affects people. It's not good to be bored by politics. Obviously in the UK, it's been a little bit different in the last few years because of Brexit. And so things have got relatively heated. But over the course of the last, more broadly, 20, 30 years or so, I think that generally speaking, people have just been dumbed down so far as politics is concerned. I'll give you one example. For example, in education, people these days are no longer taught civics. They no longer are taught how the political system works. It's as though the establishment doesn't want the people to understand the system and how they might be able to change things with their power at the ballot box or the local council or what have you.
That is absurd. That happened in Spain. There was a subject about basically citizenship, but it also taught respect to dissenting opinions or life options, and obviously the conservatives were against that. How are you gonna teach people accepting dissenting options or lifestyles? So that was removed. I agree with you. That's incredibly necessary. And on the cash, no, I don't think in Spain there's been much discussion about that, and I really don't think there will be. Mostly because most people had never seen a 500 euro note bank, and in general cash, I want to say cash as in significant amount. One of the things you could do to protect privacy is limit or put some different privacy levels depending of the amount of the transaction. But in Spain, it's associated cash in $500 bills are something for only criminals and corrupt politicians would use, or politicians or builders or whoever involved in corruption. So I think in Spain, if there was a referendum, 95% would say, yeah, we don't need cash. Yeah, it's not ideal. Let's think about how we do it. But I don't think people is so much concerned about it. We use the credit card for everything. People that subscribe to a porn site, they don't do it with cash anymore. I think
sure.
People feel more free now that Actually, you used when you bought my porn collection. You used what's called Bizum or some one of those emailing money things. So that works just fine.
That's right. That's true. Moneycheckers.com. Yeah. Manolo, Ruiz, de Elvira. Muchas gracias, señor.
Thank you.
And hey, I hope we do this again.
Yeah, it's fun.
God bless you. God bless you. I've got so many more questions I want to ask you. I want to ask you about the Spanish politics and how it has cleaned up over the last 10 years or so. Remarkably, incredible. But we'll do this another day. And I want to ask you about the royal family.
You don't corruption let me talk to you about stuff off air anymore. That's difficult.
Oh, mate.
I'll talk to Eugenia about it. It was fun.
Thank you. Thank you, Manolo.
Talk soon.
Yes, indeed. You've been tuned in to the Daily Chaos. God bless you.
Ciao, Olly.
Ciao, Manolo. Where are we today? It's Wednesday. Tomorrow, Charlotte Jameson, who couldn't come in yesterday because our builders next door were making a right old racket, is coming in. Tell us a little bit like London and what's going on with the NHS and stuff like that. Hello. What happened to my music? Don't know what happened to my music there. Just cut out. Anyway, right. So, I'm Olly Connelly. Thanks for turning up. Monday to Saturday at 5 p.m. UK time. That's noon in DC. Mr. President, if you want to pop in and tell us about how you're draining the swamp. So look, if you haven't done it already, folks, do us a favour and share the show, huh? Share the show, please. God bless. And please subscribe and all that. Do all that stuff. I've got about 850 subscribers. I need another 150 or something. And then I can do live streams from my mobile phone, which will be really useful. I can do that from the garden and stuff like that. And I will. Then I'll show you my garden. Right, okay. Catch you later. God bless you, folks. Here's to us. And bugger the bug. And hey, Boris, get well, mate. Get well. For goodness sake. Yeah, for goodness sake. Sort it out, man. Alrighty. Ciao.